T-I. Where do we spell sh? T-I. How about vacation? Okay? That's what phonics does. It lets kids get command of those more than 1,000 different ways we do our sounds. And we all know the reason we're so crazy about that is we stole all those words from all other people who spelled different, right? So when I first started doing this work, I went to my mentor, Dr. Edwin Holt, who was actually one of the young neuropsychiatrists who studied under Samuel Orton. He and Orton worked together in New York. And I said, well, let's just change that. And I thought he'd be on my side, that we were going to eliminate all of the weirdly spelled words. Just go with one way of spelling and sounding going. I said, nice idea, Earl, but good luck. That's not going to happen. I had to give it up. Okay.
Can I just ask a quick question on that point, sir?
Yeah.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
So, given that there are a proportion of readers who pick it up intuitively, as
Yep.
you said,
Yep.
I would argue that phonics still should be taught because not all of them are going to pick up the encoding, the spelling.
They don't pick it all up.
Right, and you can see problems with excellent readers
Yep.
who struggle with their spelling, not because they're dyslexic, but just because they never were instructed.
And there's a portion of this body research that says exactly what you're saying. That actually, all kids are better off to have a rich program that covers all of these things, even if they're pretty intuitive and they would have gotten a lot of it by themselves. They took kids and measured what they were able to do in second and third grade when they're getting programs. Some kids got it, some kids didn't. And in sixth grade, the kids who had actually been slower kids early on and got this kind of stuff in second and third grade, by sixth grade, they were better able to handle the hard words because they had a more thorough fundamental education. So there is an argument that you don't hurt kids who are not non-intuitive by giving them this stuff. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
What program did you use in your school? Was it OG? Was it Wilson? Which phonics program like that?
I have a list in here. We'll get to it.
Oh, okay.
Can you last long enough for me to get there? I'm speeding up.
Probably, yeah.
Anybody, you got babysitter problem, you're just sick of listening to me, feel free to pack it up and go. I won't be offended. I know I talk a lot and go a long way, but we're close, okay? We're not far from the end. All right, these two things I got to talk to you about because this bears on what you just said. So this one, orthographic, means the shape of the word. It's the way it's built, what it looks like. Orthographic word recognition. So, beginning readers have to sound words out. And when they sound a word out enough times, they become more and more automatic at recognizing that word. And if you were to look at the left hemisphere, you would find beginning reading, almost all the business is up here in Rocha's area and Worthy's area, right here. And as that person gets to be a more accomplished reader, less and less neural activity right here, and more neural activity back here. Guess what's back here? Vision. What you're doing is as you get more and more familiar with the word, you're moving your processing of it out of the sounding out part of the brain because you don't need to sound it out anymore. How many people in here are good readers? Raise your hand if you're a good reader. Okay? How often do you sound out a word? Like never? Or you're reading your material about how to prepare your tax return and you turn and you see words you've never seen before in your life, right? Or you got something from your doctor, then you have to sound it out. Okay. So, building orthographic word recognition does not come by putting a word in front of a child and saying, remember this. It comes from the child assembling the parts of that word through decoding and through phonics and doing that repetitively, and that builds a foundation for the brain to have confidence that it knows this word. And then this word no longer processes in these two places, it slides on back. And when this word shows up, guess what lights up? The occipital portion back here where the vision thing is. So the art of becoming a really good reader is actually getting your automatic word recognition in line so that it slides on back, and when you see words, you know it. Now, really good readers, they don't just look at a word at a time. They usually look 2, 3, 4, 5 words, and they're good at recognizing phrases that kind of go together. So they'll do whole phrases, and they will recognize every word in that phrase instantly the moment we see it. Right. Okay. So, Automatic word recognition is the step that gets you close to comprehension. So here's a concept about your brain. Your brain has, the term for this is limited X. X stands for how much processing power your brain has. And you have a limit on that processing power. So kids who are good decoders, but they still have to decode every darn word, all of their processing power as they're reading is being taken up by identifying words. You're not just supposed to identify them, though. You're supposed to decide on which meaning of the word is relevant in the sentence, and you're supposed to join that to the meaning of the next one, the next one, the next. So when you come to the end of the sentence, you basically know what the sentence said, right? You comprehend it. That doesn't happen if all of your processing power is used up figuring out what the words were. Nothing left over for figuring out what the sentence meant or the paragraph meant. Sometimes kids get pretty good at sentences, but not at whole paragraphs. So it is crucial to get automatic word recognition. There's a guy doing a lot of work right now. In fact, he's having a conference just, where's Kilpatrick?
Wednesday in Lancaster.
Wednesday in Lancaster. He's here, and he's probably the big noise in this field right now. He has found out some very special things that you can do to actually accelerate how kids develop automatic word recognition. And so that's the big step before you can get to comprehension. If you can't get the words like this, you have not enough processing power left over to string them all together, put together the syntax, and to select the actual meaning word. You know that over half of English nouns and verbs have multiple meanings that aren't connected at all? Right? So when you hear the word father, what part of speech is that? Or a verb. And it has two completely different meanings, right? So that word is in the sentence, and you don't know which meaning it is, you're not going to comprehend what's going on there properly. Okay, so one more thing here. Intuitive language learners typically show up. The NICHD guys did a lot of research on this. They want to know how you got to be recognize the word. Intuitive language learners can automatically recognize a word after 3 or so, really great people can do it with 1 exposure, 3 or so what we call thoughtful exposures to the word. It's not just like the word was in the hallway, but you had to talk about it or somebody spoke it or you interacted with the word. 3 exposures. And they have it in their automatic word recognition vocabulary. Kids in sort of the middle of the heap, it's usually 10 to 15 exposures. Kids on the non-intuitive end, it's north of 20. Lots of kids require 20, 25, 30 thoughtful exposures and interactions with the word to get it into the words that you know by looking at them. Wow, that's big, isn't it? So that means if we have a kid like that, we need to know what are we going to do to build fluent and accurate oral reading, because if you can't do that, that limited X thing kicks in and you can't do the comprehension. And because, what's reading about? It's really, this is what reading is about. Reading isn't about any of this stuff. This is just what you got to do to get there. So if fluency up here isn't appropriate, then you got big troubles up the real way. There are about 50 fluency programs on the market today. Some of them are in books, some of them are on computers, some of them are on every kind of thing you can think of. Probably about 49 of them are no good, because they aren't designed to build the neurology to create the effect you're looking for, which is automatic word recognition. You can do practice in a lot of different things that is actually practice, but it does not produce the result you want. Only certain kinds of practice build phonemic awareness. Only certain kinds of practice build good decoding and encoding skills. Only a certain kind of practice will build the neurology that you need to become fluent in oral reading. So most schools have multiple fluency programs going on, and most of them don't build the neurology that you want because they aren't correctly designed. That's a very important thing to know. People are selling fluency programs left and right, and it's like, I told somebody this earlier today. When my son was a young fellow, he wanted to be a point guard. He wanted to play basketball and be a point guard. And I told him you got to be a really, really, really good dribbler. And so every night he was out in the driveway, dribbling, practicing dribbling. I started watching him. He only dribbles with the right hand. So he was doing a lot of practice on his dribbling. It wasn't building the skill he needed. If you are only a right-handed dribbler in basketball, you are easy to stop. Overplay the right-hand side. The kid can't go the other direction. You got to pull. So my kid was practicing like crazy and going nowhere. And then now, right? You've got to do the right kind of practice. So this is a place where knowing the science and then doing the follow-up reading about what is specifically the kind of thing that works. If you want a reference on this, it's, she's from Wake Forest, Marianne, dang it. I'll try to remember and get it to you and you can maybe share it with people. She and her partner down at Wake Forest did a review of all the research on fluency programs, and they lay out the specific pieces that need to be there if a fluency program is going to build the kind of fluency that you need to get to the promised land. Right? All the stuff we just been talking about, guess where it all came from? NICHD research. Wonderful, isn't it? Think of these tools. And we have them at our command. And we have guidance on how to put them to work. All right. This is another piece that plays into fluency. Human brains retrieve information that the owner of the brain actually knows at different rates from the brain. This plays a role in reading. Kids have to put tons of information in the brain about how our letters and our letter combinations produce the sounds, those 1,133 sounds. That's oceans of stuff. Many kids get really good phonology training and they get it all in there. But when they read and try to sound out words, they sound like they still don't know it. Because they get it out too slowly. So the way you find out if a kid has a rapid automatic naming deficit, this is one of those neurological deficits that is partially at cause for reading failure, is they get the stuff in but they can't get it out. And when they can't get it out quickly, then it doesn't sound like reading. It sounds like Dylan playing for Elise. Okay? And that usually makes people think this kid's phonology is no good, so what should we do now? Let's teach him more decoding. Well, hey, he already knows all the stuff about how to decode. He just can't get it out fast enough to do it. So this is a very simple test that was developed many years ago with a speech-language pathologist who were worrying about some other fluency issues, but it works very well here. So here's what you do. You take a kid and you say, what color is that? And they tell you, what's this one, this one, this one. So then they know all the colors. No problem. There's no ignorance here about the colors. So the test goes like this. Okay, I'm going to ask you to read the names of those colors to me. Just say the names of the colors. Go across these rows and do it as fast as you can. Get all the way through and name them all correctly as fast as you can. How many people are actually classroom teachers? Anybody? You could do this in your classroom, and I promise you, you'd get a bell curve distribution. And I don't care what grade you're looking at. Some kids are going to be lightning fast. Some are going to be in the fat part of the kid. Some kids are going to be really slow. What's interesting here? This isn't about whether the kid knows the colors, is it? Because already checked. She knows them all. No problem. Can't get it out quickly. Okay? And then, when the code that you're trying to extract, it's not a color or a picture. When it is linguistically coded information, numbers or letters, the kid who's slow at this will be much slower at that and much slower at that. So here's another place where in about 5 minutes, we can know if a kid in kindergarten, first or second grade has a rapid automatic naming deficit that's going to get in the way down the road. Once you do teach them good control of the phonics, they can't get it out. So now you need to know, what do you do to fix that? And fortunately, there is science to support that. We don't have it. So a researcher, one of the top researchers in the field named Marianne Wolf, she's the one who did the original research on what is called a double deficit. Normally we used to think that the definition is that kids who are dyslexic have a core phonological deficit. At the core of the problem is stuff that has to do with phonology. Marianne found out there were kids where the core of their deficit was actually the rapid automatic retrieval. Then she found out you can have one of these things or you can have both of them. If you just have a phonological core deficit, that's the easiest one to remediate. If you just have a rapid retrieval deficit, that's the second easiest one. If you have both, which is called a double deficit, that is the hardest remediation task, hardest for the kid, hardest for the kid. Worth noting, because you know that kid, it's going to take that kid longer. It's going to take more years, probably, in an intervention program to get there. All right, risk factors. This is one of their jobs. They're trying to figure out what things predispose kids to fail to learn to read. Okay, there's a very strong genetic factor. About 85% of all diagnosed dyslexics have a close blood relative who could not learn to read, write, and spell. Mom or dad, grandma, grandpa, or blood-related aunt or uncle. So that's a question that every school should, when they're screening kids in kindergarten or first grade, every school should ask the parent, does this child have a close blood relative who really struggles with that stuff? 85% is a very high number. So dyslexia is primarily a genetically caused issue. Other things can do it, of course. Delayed or difficult acquisition of oral language. There are benchmarks about what kids should be doing with oral language at age 1, 2, 3. If a kid is missing those benchmarks, that is telling you that the raw wiring material here that is supposed to make the learning to talk and listen work, there's something amiss there. That's what's happening. So if you know a kid is missing those benchmarks, you now suddenly see a kid for whom the risk that being a reading failure just went way up. Third thing is a hearing impairment, but that's pretty easy to tell because it's got a hearing impairment, don't have to screen it for that. But a lot of kids have what is called this otitis media, where they have continual ear infections. And when the infection sets in, it creates pus inside the ear. And in that part of the ear where sound waves are going in, and they're a very young child, and their brain is learning to make extremely fine distinctions between sounds. So the sound of short I is I, as in pin. Sound of short E is eh, as in pen. If you're a teacher or a parent and you've got a kid who's really struggling to learn to read, bet you anything that kid struggles over something. If they had these chronic ear infections, much of the time their brain was supposed to be clearly parsing the waves, the sound waves coming in, and learning to make a clear distinction between an if in a word and an eh in a word. Those two sounds weren't different because they had to go through the mud to get into the processing part. And so they lost the developmental capacity to make fine distinctions between the sounds of letters. So that is a risk. You want to know. You want to ask, does your kid have tubes in his ears or that kind of thing? And then we talked about this one earlier, a characteristic of poverty where the kids aren't exposed to adequate oral language for development. Right? Those are the 4 correlates that we know now to look for. So here's the word. Pre-service science, reading science is left out of most pre-service teacher education. Many districts don't know this stuff, and so they don't have a commitment to working on this stuff. Many districts know there is such a thing as early identification, early intervention, but they have reservations about it, and so they elect not to do it. But I'm going to not work my waters. I just want to tell you, here is why early identification is so important. The brain is more plastic and more responsive to learning hard new stuff the younger it is. And it turns out there's actually a reason for that. When children are from K, the boundary is a little mushy. K to first from 1 to 5, 6, or 7 years old. Their brain is flooded with a substance, a liquid substance called BDNF. Fancy name until you think about it and you say, well, duh. BDNF is something that flushes the brain of these children with what amounts to fertilizer for synapses. It makes synapses grow like crazy. And early on, the brain automatically produces a ton of this stuff. And BDNF stands for Brain-Derived Neurotrophic Factor. Did that tell you what it really is? It's sounded like it did. No. It's something that you find in the brain. So I don't know why they don't have a better name, but BDNF makes the brain able to create new synapses much more quickly. During that time, remember I told you early, in the first 5 years of life, babies' brains form about 1,000 trillion synapses, building all of these things. Well, after about 6 or 7, you don't want to keep doing that because the brain gets so complex that it can't function efficiently. So what then happens is, at about 6, 7, and 8, the brain has a rule. Use it or lose it. If you've got neurons in networks and you aren't stimulating them and demanding them to work for you on a regular basis almost every day, guess what? They get cut out of the path. Now the brain is getting less complex, but much more efficient because at first you just got to figure out what the heck everything is in the world, and then you got to make stuff work. Too much complexity gets in your way. So when do you want to be doing this hard stuff with children? Not after the BDNF is gone. You want to be doing that when the BDNF is there. K1, 2. That's when you're going to get the best bang for your buck. All right, this is what I'm going to tell you. One of NICH's jobs was to find out what worked best in trying to fix the problems that the non-readers had. Here's what they found out. The earlier you start and the earlier you intervene with a variety of tactics that are specifically designed to build the synapses in the place where you don't have very many, the faster the remediation goes and the more profoundly good the remediation is. The later you start, the harder it is and the worse it is. So here's what they did. They demonstrated that a well-trained teacher in the stuff can work with 4 children in kindergarten or first or second grade at a similar level of disadvantage in the early things, the phonemic awareness, the phonological process, and your rapid automatic name, find their difference. And here's what it took to get those kids to grade level. One teacher working with 4 similarly afflicted children, 30 minutes a day for a school year. And guess what? On grade level. One teacher, 30 minutes a day with 4 children, 30 minutes a day. And these kids are on grade level. Wait until 5th grade for the same kinds of deficits. And they just kept pouring on more and more intervention until they finally got those kids to grade level. Here was the application that got the 5th graders back to grade level. One teacher a day, working 2 hours a day, 1-to-1 with each of those students. At the end of the year, they were back on grade level. What school district can provide 1-to-1 for 2 hours a day for every 5th grader who is 2 grades below? The answer to that question is, it's not going to happen, is it? So, that application of remediation, did I turn the stupid thing off? Oh, okay, there we go. Okay. Yeah. It's only 9, come on. They're fascinating. All right, we're just about at the end. I just want you to get them, right? I want you to know what the difference is if you wait until 5th grade. And the prime time is when? Kindergarten, we got to know right away. 1st grade. What are the 4 most important years of your child's academic and professional successful life? 4 most important years. Kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade. Because that's when they learn how to read. If they get to 4th grade, more NICHD information here. In 4th grade, averagely good readers who find out that reading is enjoyable and they read on their own, undirected, they will read 1 million or more words a year all by themselves. The consequence of that, doing it themselves, not because mom made them and teacher made them, they gain 4,000 more words in their automatic word recognition vocabulary all by themselves, and the teachers didn't have to do a thing. They gain reasonable knowledge, not totally accurate, reasonable knowledge about the meaning of 10,000 new words, because they use the context of what they're reading to see a word they don't know, and then they think it must mean something like this. It wouldn't make any sense if it didn't make something like it mean something like this. So what happens is, now you're looking at fourth graders, good fourth grade readers who read independently for pleasure, 4,000 more words than their automatic word recognition about 10,000 more words that they have a good idea what those words are. And you know what? That happens again next year in fifth grade. It happens again next year in sixth grade. It happens again next year in seventh grade. The fourth grader who is not reading independently for pleasure at grade level is doing what? Still sounding words out. No 4,000 new automatic, no 10,000 new meaning. So one whole year, she's now 4,000 and 10,000 behind. At the next grade level, what happened? Same thing again. 4,000 more automatic words, 10,000 more vocabulary. Next grade, same. Next grade, same. In eighth grade, who do they write the textbooks for? They write the textbooks for the kids who begin 4,000 words a year ever since fourth grade. What about the kid who's still sounding words out? They are toast. It's almost insurmountable by that point. All right, what do we do? So the question was, what are we going to do? Here's the profound information from our scientists. What do we do? Find out who they are. First chance you get. Don't wait. Right? Sorry. You got all that going into it. This is all the stuff that the scientists say about why this stuff really works and how effective it is. Key two. As soon as you find out that that's the issue, low capacity in some of these critical areas, start fixing it. And then the rule is don't wait. So here's a problem with RTI. What is one of the core assumptions of RTI? You start out in tier one. And then we wait and see for a while what's happening. Tier one isn't doing it, then what do we do? Tier two. So then we do some work in tier two, and we wait a little while longer, and we don't see much happening, then what do we do? Tier three. Where should this kid be right off the bat if we know this kid is low in all four of those places? They should be getting remediation day one. Kids who get screened and show you that they are low in 3 or 4 of those neurological correlates should not have to wait their way through tier 1, tier 2, and finally get into tier 3. By that time, you have missed times when the brain is most responsive. And you may have burned a hole in that child's heart in terms of how they feel about themselves and how they feel about school. It's not a good thing either. It's so easy. Okay, last thing. Are there still any administrators left in here? Are they willing to self-identify? Who are you? Okay. Here's the next thing that you'll like. Cheaper. It is cheaper to do this. In Ohio, we got the Ohio Dyslexia Pilot Project, which was a 3-year study with 8 public districts, some large, some small, a few from urban, a few from suburban, a few from rural. And they agreed to go along, to implement a protocol where they screened their incoming kindergartners, they found the ones who were low, with all the stuff we've been talking about all night, and then they provided a kind of intervention that is actually designed to build the synapses that you're looking for. So they had a cohort that started in the first year, and then they had that same cohort in second, in the next grade, and the same cohort in the next grade. But they measured the outcomes for each cohort, cumulative or separate, all the way along. And it worked to this degree that in our state, in second grade, if you aren't reading, if you're not reading well in second grade, the state requires the district to provide you with intensive, often one-to-one personal intervention to get you ready to pass the third grade guide. So that business, you got to provide that highly costly, time-consuming intervention is a serious thing. You have to do it. It costs a lot of money. So the districts in this project, at the end of 3 years when it was evaluated, the districts that had the most children, so the difference in the money I'm going to tell you right are just a function of how many kids they had enrolled in the program. Districts with the most kids in the program saved $120,000 in the single year of the program that was measured the money, third year. Where did they save that money? No intensive intervention, because the kids had developed capacity to meet benchmark without it. What was the result? The outcome for the kids. In the first year, 64% of the kids in the first cohort were functioning at or below benchmark. And about 70% of the kids were failing the end of the year reading. 1 year in this program, those numbers flipped. The number of kids at or above benchmark was 2/3 higher than it was before. And the number of kids at or below benchmark, 2/3 below. And it costs less. Not just in dollars. Guess where else it costs less? That's where it costs less. So you were moving people on into the rest of your program who were confident and able learners instead of people who I'm quitting. I'll take questions. I'll stick around as long as anybody wants to stick around and talk and ask. I'll do that. Yes, you have to.